Hello, and welcome to the Science of Selling webinar. My name is Michael Gunther, and I'm a business consultant at Collaboration Business Consulting. And we're going to talk today about the science of selling. And I don't know if you've ever experienced as a sales leader or as a sales individual, different things like sales going up and down and never consistent, or you're doing a lot of activity and you feel like you're getting in front of a lot of people, but deals just aren't closing. Or that maybe that you feel like everybody seems that all they care about is price and they don't care about the value or quality or service that you can bring to the table. Those are a few things we're going to talk about today, but we're going to approach it from what I call the science of selling. And when you think of selling, there's always the art of the sell and the science of the sell. So the art of the sell is the relationship building, it is the negotiation skills, the communication skills. So I'm not going to talk much about that today. I may tap into it a little bit, but I'm really going to focus about the science of selling. And when you think of selling and science, it is really, think about when you have a hypothesis. So in scientific communities, you always create a hypothesis. And from that hypothesis, you're always trying to prove it right or wrong. So for instance, why aren't my sales team members selling? Could it be because they're not the right people? Could it be because they don't have the right resources? Could it be because we as management aren't managing them effectively? So those could all be different hypotheses. But most people end up just assuming it's the people aren't the right people, and it's not necessarily the science behind selling or the structure behind selling. So today I want to dispel the myth of some of those thoughts and actually let you know that there are elements that may be missing within your organization that are preventing you from selling at the pace you want to and provide your product and services at the level you know you can to more customers out there in the marketplace. A lot of our clients come to us and they want to grow their business and they're struggling with their sales team. In fact, I had a client many years ago come to us and their business was down 40%. They're going to fire all 10 of their salespeople. And I said, before we do that, let me meet them and talk to them. And by meeting the folks, actually, they had some really good sales skills and good experience, but they're missing some structure and process, and the leadership team was not looking at sales from a scientific approach. By changing their perspective and adding some of these scientific ideas, we're not only able to grow their business by 40%, the next year they grew by over 100%. And within 2 years, not a single one of the reps had left by the company's choice. One rep left on their own choice, and the other 9 reps are still there today, the ones they were going to fire and the ones they thought were the reasons why the business wasn't working. So let me talk about the things that I think cause lack of sales and where science may be missing. The first thing I call is the Seesaw Paradox. Sometimes I might call it the roller coaster of selling as well. And this is where you might have an amazing month. You broke sales records, you hit your numbers, and then the next month is dire. You can barely hit your numbers, no one's performing. Or you have an amazing quarter, and all of a sudden, nothing. The next quarter is empty. The Seesaw Paradox is actually caused by a couple of things. One, often the leaders are not managing the sales process effectively. They're not looking at what is the true process that we need to be operating on and measuring within our sales activity. Most sales teams measure their goal. We want to close $100,000 per rep per month, as an example. Excuse me. And most organizations also might say, hey, we need to generate 20 new leads a month. But what they're not doing is tracking and measuring in between that $100,000 goal and how many leads are coming in. And as simple as this sounds, one of the first things we do is begin to look at how many leads are coming in, how many proposals. In fact, we might even add how many qualified leads. We might go from leads to qualified leads to proposals to closes. And as we track these areas and start getting some numbers in place, we're able to start generating some ratios. So we might determine that out of 100 leads that come in, we know that about 50% are qualified leads. And of those 50%, we can look at how many of those are actually moving to proposals, and then how many of those proposals are closing. And with those ratios, we can actually determine what's working or not. So for instance, we had a client just recently come to us. They've been growing. We've been working with them for a while, and they're really concerned about their sales team and not hitting their minimum monthly numbers. And so we pulled out their numbers, and we looked at all 8 of their sales team members. Well, 3 of them actually were doing really well, and they were exceeding their numbers. And if you looked at their average close ratio or qualified lead ratio, or those qualified to proposal ratio and proposal to close ratios, those top 3 are actually exceeding the company averages. The middle 3, you could start looking at, and you realize that they were stumbling from proposal to close. They were getting the same number of leads and same number of those 2 qualified leads, but when they trying to get those folks to proposal and those folks from proposal to close, the ratios are much different. So it allowed us to make a hypothesis and say, okay, those reps probably have an issue in either a skill, process, or strategy within qualifying the right people, or being able to move people from a qualified lead and getting them to want to get to a proposal, and or if they had a low proposal to close ratio, maybe they don't have the right closing skills. Maybe they're not following the right process. Maybe we're not getting the proposals quick enough to the client. And through that process of scientific elimination, we were able to determine some specific process changes and skill changes. So for instance, one of the reps was having a hard time getting his proposals out quickly. And so he was losing business because the competitors were getting something in the client's hand within 3 or 4 days, and this guy was taking 2 weeks. And so that was a process switch that we were able to get someone to help him get his proposals out quicker to help get that business in. If we would have just said this rep isn't working, he's not making his numbers, maybe we need to get another rep, which were some of the conversations I was having with the leaders, we could have potentially lost a really good employee because we as leaders weren't scientifically looking at the sales process. So if you're having a seesaw experience in your organization where you have a high month, a high quarter, and then it goes down, it tells me that you are not measuring the right things within the organization in terms of the process of how people are selling and the structures supporting those folks. This is probably one of the more common areas. And a lot of times people say, hey, I have a CRM, client relationship management system up. I get all these reports, but they don't manage against the reports, or they're not getting the reports they need. So if I were you as a leader in sales, I'd get really clear on what are the steps within the sales process that you want to measure and track your sales reps on, so you can determine where your biggest gaps are in terms of skill, process, and strategy to improve your reps' skills and ratios to get you consistent sales moving forward. The second symptom I often see is when people are struggling with sales and consistency is they're taking business from everybody. They're trying to hit their numbers. The sales rep just need to get the business in. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I know I've done it as a leader, a salesperson of our organization. We're trying to hit our cash number. We're trying to hit our sales number. A project comes to you that deep down you know probably isn't the right fit for you, but if we close it, we're going to hit our numbers. If we don't close it, we're not. And sometimes we do that and we're bringing on clients that are not the right fit. I love this book by Bo called Small Giants, and in it, he talks about the business you say no to is more important than the business you say yes to. So why do people bring the business in? It's because they're often, the sales reps are driven by the goal, not the quality of the deal coming into the organization. In your organization, this often shows up that once that client hits production or operations trying to deliver that product or service, there's all kinds of issues with that client in trying to deliver that product and service, because it's a realization after they've been sold that they weren't the right fit for the organization. We have a young man I know, this gentleman named Mauro, who works for a manufacturing client of ours. And Mauro this last year went and started to look at his clients. And he started to create a really ideal client profile. And his company and his family have been in this business for 40 plus years. And he realized that their businesses changed and their clients have changed. And by developing this client profile, he was able to start identifying which of their existing clients no longer are a fit for the organization, as well as all the new clients the sales reps are bringing in that may not be a fit for the organization. And the reason he was doing this is because they were having a lot of clients in production having issues, and the production team were saying, God, these people aren't even right fits for us. The sales team was trying to do a good job and sell new business because that was their job, to sell new deals, but they weren't the right client. And so I put it up here to develop a client profile. One of the most significant things I think you could do if you haven't done it. Not everybody's your client. Not everybody can use your service as much as you think. I have people, everybody can use our service. Yeah, but no, every organization attracts certain types of clients. If you were to make a list and look at your top 10 clients that you wish every one of your clients were this type of client, and if you made a list of your top 10 clients that you wish you never had to do business with again. So you have your top 10 you would love to do business with, the top 10 you would never want to do business with again. And if you started analyzing those clients and looking at their demographics, their age, their how long they've been in business, who's your key contact, their education levels, all the demographic aspects of those folks, you also look at the psychographics, and psychographics are buying behaviors. So if you're able to go and really look at the psychographics of those folks and identify their buying behaviors, how do they make decisions? Are they quick decision makers, slow decision makers? Do they clients that are really trying to create a partnership, or do they only care about price? What are those buying behaviors that match your top 10, the ones you love and the ones you don't want to work with anymore? Then we also recommend that you look at the technographics. And technographics are looking at how they use technology. Are they early adopters? Are they tech whizzes? Or are they using old technology? How are they using software, etc.? All those different aspects. Because with those three categories defined by your top 10 clients that you love to work with and don't want to work with, you'll start noticing patterns. And you'll start quickly see a pattern of the type of clients that you don't want to work with anymore. And you could use it as a way to start identifying with your sales reps, these are the folks we don't want to work with. So if you're talking to someone, they're having these issues, or they're of this size, or wanting this product or service, we don't want to work with them. And so we have to be able to say no to them. At the same time, if you can create some client profiles, and sometimes an organization might have 2 to 5 client profiles, ideal. But if you have these ideal client profiles, you can start changing your messaging, your marketing, all the things that attract the similar type of clients. Because the ideal client profiles are going to come to you for the same reasons. They're going to come to you if you're looking for clients that want to be in a partnership, you're going to find those type of clients and assess that as you're talking to them. The more that you can get your client base to be your ideal client profile, you'll get out of inconsistent sales within your organization. In addition, you'll save marketing dollars and time. So many organizations waste so much money on marketing to clients. If you're spending tons of marketing and you're getting a bunch of leads, but you're not closing the right clients, my hunch is you haven't done a good job on identifying your ideal client profile. You haven't done a good job in getting your team to really evaluate who are the right folks to go after and who should we say no to. One last thing here, I'll use Morrow's example again. I use at the beginning of this section, is that you have to be able to also evaluate over time, are the clients you used to work with still the right clients for you? Because your organization changes. You might work on larger projects than you used to. You might have different services than you offered before. You might be growing in different directions that might still trying to squeeze in certain clients because you've done business for a long time, but they really don't fit into your new model. So by developing your ideal client profile for today, you may have to say goodbye to some clients as well, or try to sell them on your new offerings to see if they want to now fit in your new model. So I encourage you, define who you want to go after, and then be willing to say no and get your reps be willing to say no. Next area is price. And when I think of the science of selling, and I hear people saying, gosh, my reps are always discounting, or they're always saying they can't close anything because we're too expensive. There's a couple things that come to mind. So that's the hypothesis, right? My reps say we're too expensive. So if I have that hypothesis, maybe I need to go evaluate, are we? And do we have a reason to be? So some clients have the reason to be more expensive. They offer better service, better quality, better time. They add more value to the client. So they should be more expensive. So one, if that's the hypothesis, are we too expensive? Maybe we need to do a competitive analysis and evaluate where do we play within that. The other thing I often will have a hypothesis, and our reps feel like they have to discount to sell. Do our reps know how to sell value? Most people will buy for value. In fact, most people will pay more if they feel like you understand their needs because you have sold to your ideal client profile because you know what their needs are, and that you're able to sell them value on that your product or service is going to help them solve whatever they're trying to solve. And so I would have a hypothesis that my reps are all selling by feeling like price and always having to discount. Does my team know how to sell value? Okay, scientific, that's my hypothesis. So now we can start determining their skill set. And maybe we need to train them differently. Maybe we need to show them value. Maybe they don't get the value. I also find a lot of times price pressure through doing this analysis that it's the reps themselves who are saying, I would never pay that much for this. Well, that's their own biases coming into the play. So it's not the client saying that, it's the rep having a price issue. So without that hypothesis, do my employees know how to sell value? I have nothing to go against. With that hypothesis, I can now evaluate my team on their skills, their ability to sell value. Do they understand our value? And giving them that, making them sure they understand our competitive edge. Because if you sell on price and you're discounting on price and you're attracting those type of clients, those clients will leave you for price and a better discount. They're not coming to you because they want a long-term relationship. They're not coming to you because you're adding value. They're only coming to you because you're the lowest price. So it's a dangerous path to go down for organizations if their reps are always having to sell on price and always having to sell on discount, because it becomes an expectation of your clients that you always are willing to discount and lower your price if they complain. So also, it's easier for those people to leave because they're not coming to you because of who you are or what you're offering. They're coming to you because of the price of what you're offering. The last thing I would suggest was a great book called Escaping the Price-Driven Sell. It's based off another book called Spin Selling, but it's really how to become a consultative salesperson and getting away from price driving the decision. So if you have reps that feel like they always have to discount, or you feel you always have to discount to get the business, you may need to step back and say, do I need to enhance my sales skills? Go read a book like Escaping the Price-Driven Sale to really enhance the team's ability. The last area I just want to talk about briefly is how to combat a lack of results. And what do I mean by that? If there's a lot of activity and your team's busy, they're making, there are 50 calls a day, they're sending out their emails, they're going to networking of folks, they're out there proposing, but they're not closing. So if you have a lot of activity, but you're not getting a lot of results, what do you need to do? You already know it. You have to create a hypothesis. So what's broken in our process? Are we not getting the right type of lead? Are we not qualifying the people properly? Are we not proposing to them properly? I can't even tell you how many times I hear people, I made my 50 calls. Well, did you get any results? Or I made my 10 appointments for the week, but did you get any results? And a lot of organizations will track activity, but they're not tracking and measuring how successful that activity was in getting outcomes. So if you feel like your team is doing a lot of activity, but they are not getting the results, I might create a hypothesis that the activity they're doing isn't the right type of activity, and start looking at the skills, process, and strategies of the activities they're doing to determine if we can change the behavior to really get the results we want and get out of this up and down selling or inconsistent sales. Now, sales is hard work, as all of you know. And I love a good friend of mine, Steve Perry, once said, not the singer, but another guy named Steve Perry. And Steve sells $1 million deals. He's an amazing sales guy. He's been selling since he was probably born. But he always says sales is always going to be your highest paid, hardest job you'll ever have, or the easiest, lowest paying job you'll ever have. Because he says sales is hard work. You're always having to fine tune. You always have to analyze what you're doing, and you always have to get better at what you're doing. You're never there. And often organizations who've had a lot of success for selling, and all of a sudden they don't, they keep doing bad activities, not realizing that we need to elevate their skill, their process, or their strategy to get to the next level of growth. So let me jump in to see if we have some questions. And I see some have popped up on the webinar here. And if I don't get to all your questions, please feel free to reach out. And we love to be able to respond to them. And we will respond to anyone who posts a question that we didn't get a chance to answer. So the first one is from Marie. Let's see, we are currently not measuring our sales process. Can you suggest some initial areas that we should begin tracking? Well, Marie, I would always just start simplistic. I would start with leads. I would start with proposals, and I would start with closes. And I believe tracking is like an accordion, okay? Putting your scientific hat on. As a leader, you need to be spending time as a scientist here figuring out your sales mix. So for instance, we're getting all these leads in and they're not moving to proposal. I might open up what I'm tracking. So I might track where my leads are coming from. I might tracking based on where they're coming from, how many become qualified leads. And then of those qualified leads, how many are actually becoming proposals, and then how many of those are closing. And by opening up your tracking, you can start figuring out what's broken in your process. Once you figure that out, you can close your tracking back up and just focus on leads, proposals, and closes. So at a minimum, I would start with leads, proposals, and closes. And then over time, you can open and close it as you need to based on where your biggest issues are or your hypothesis of your biggest issues are, to open up and start managing and leading and trying to figure out what's right or what's wrong. I had an example of this. We had a woman, past client, sending us a lot of leads. And we're always appreciative of people sending us leads. You know, we get 90% of our business from referrals. So she was sending us leads, but they weren't the right qualified leads. And it was amazing because we're going, God, she's worked with us before. So we actually sat down with her and said, thank you so much for all your leads, but we feel like we can't service them because they're not the right fit. And we shared with her our ideal client profile. She goes, oh, I apologize. I said, don't apologize. I'm glad you're always thinking of us. But if you happen to know anybody in these areas or this type of profile, those would be great leads for us. Well, her leads slowed down, but the ones she sent to us, instead of sending those leads that couldn't work, all the leads she sent to us and continues to send to us are now really good leads for us. But without that hypothesis, if we didn't track where the leads were coming from and why they weren't closing, we would never been able to have that conversation. Long answer to your question, Marie, but start small and then you can expand. Next question is from Steve. Can you suggest some characteristics we should identify with respect to clients we should not be doing business with? Well, there's the obvious answer of that, right? You know, don't do business with people unethical. I would not do people who just want a price or concerned about price. Again, they'll leave you for price. But I would have to ask you to really go through the clients who had that you would never want to do business with again. And if you really went and looked at what was it that didn't work, what were the characteristics, what were their behaviors, what didn't you like working with them, you will start being able to really define those characteristics of who not to work with And then you can do the opposite of really defining who you want to work with. We had a group, they were a landscaping company, growing 2 or 3 million in size, and they actually were struggling with a lot of clients, and they started to find some consistent behaviors. These people would not listen to them when they would give design suggestions about how they should design their yards. They weren't listening to the experts, even though they said they wanted to hire them as experts. And then they weren't happy with the end result. And so they realized people who are questioning them in the process and not respecting their expertise often aren't good fits for them. So now when someone comes to them and the questions they're asking, they're able to identify whether they're going to be a good fit or not. The next question is from Austin. Oh, this is an interesting one, and we see this a lot. What's the right ratio of number of salespeople to have in an organization against the total people in the organization? And he says, can you also outline what you look for in good sales candidates? Every organization should have a ratio, and it's often based on your industry, how many full-time equivalents we should have in the sales organization generating business for us. When organizations don't do that, especially growing organizations, they often get organizations that are very operationally heavy, and that their sales team's trying to, in essence, feed a larger organization, but they're not growing and expanding the sales team properly. There's a great book called The Machine about how to really design a sales force to grow your organization and how to treat it through process and structure differently than I think most people are used to. So I might look that up, Austin, The Machine. And the other thing is that there's a ratio that's right for your industry. You might want to look at your industry data through your associations of what the right ratio. So we had a client, for instance, the owner was building the business. He's doing the majority of sales. He has a team, they're a $10 million company, but he's so busy running the business. He's helping out with sales, other people are helping him, but they've stagnated. And the reason was they don't have even one full-time person whose sole job is to get business in. And they've started the shift where they now have not only a full-time person in helping with sales, they have one with marketing, one person supporting the owner, one person supporting proposals, and guess what? They're now growing at a 35 to 40% click because they've been able to now have more resources to get that energy that is needed to really grow the organization. So I'd really question about looking at, do you have the right number of people? Last thing here is when you're assessing your sales strategy, treat it like scientific research. Create a hypothesis, then set out to prove it right or wrong. If it's not working, what's broken? Is it a skill, process, or strategy? Remember, come as a scientist. And as a leader, you need to be spending time, not just managing people, but analyzing what's working or not working to be able to move things forward. I do thank you for your time today. We'd love to talk to you about how we might be able to help grow your business. We have a track record of growing businesses. Our average client continues to grow after we do work with them by a percent of about 300% growth over a 3-year period. So let's talk. I'd love to have a 30-minute consultation with you and see if we can help really take your business to the next level. And as our mission statement is, it's to inspire you, educate, and empower you to truly achieve breakthrough performance. Thank you very much, and I hope you have an amazing day.